Good morning, Amber.
Hello, Bethany.
How are you?
Mama, how are you?
I'm good.
You look beautiful.
Thank you.
You're glowing.
Yes, I am. It's like it's skin, it's spirit, it's like everything is glowing. It's amazing.
I'm so happy for you.
Oh, thank you, love. Yeah, it's been pretty unreal. It was ended up being almost like it was a life-threatening thing for me. Like I ended up on three operating tables that day. They
Oh,
never
no.
had to cut. Somehow they never had to cut. Like it was like I don't know, like I'm still figuring out like all the meaning of like my purpose and my passion being like up leveled on like whoa. But in a nutshell, like the power of intention, the power of like there were so many times during that delivery that like Jake and I had it was kind of a joke. We were like, two humans go in, three humans come home. Whatever has to happen so that that is the case, that's our plan. Like, and people would laugh, and I'm like, no, I mean, we have goals, but ideals of how we'd like things to go, but ultimately, that's our plan. And I can't tell you how many times like it was like I had made a choice to live. My desire to live was so strong. My desire to go home with my family was so strong. And even Jake saying he was like, I leaned on that so hard during that day, like after the fact, where he was like, I just kept thinking three humans are going home, like whatever has to happen, so three of us go home, like. And so there's like a big story in there somewhere that will come out as lessons are learned and realized more fully. But it is such a beautiful thing to be home and to have our little Jackson and honestly to be back at work. Like I did office hours like 2 days after we got home. I was like, I'm home. Like I can't wait to check in with everybody. Like it's like amazing how it doesn't even feel like work to me. Like how so anyway, that's like a little checkup on me and how I've what's been going down for me and how I'm showing up on this call today. Like totally different version of myself than even you saw me and and whatever since our last call.
Wow. Well, I'm
So,
so grateful that you pulled through and that obviously you're meant to be here. And that will definitely come through. I think when the timing is meant to happen, you'll figure all of that out. My
mm,
mother had a very similar experience, but in a car accident, and it was very clear that
yeah.
she's meant to be here still.
Hmm.
And I mean, she actually saw herself like on the table though. She was completely out. And yeah, so it is an amazing thing, and I'm so grateful that we're talking and that you're healthy and that your baby's healthy and all three humans did come home.
Right?
And oh, it's so good. I've had a lot happen as well, like
I
huge.
bet. So your turn. Dish, fill me in,
Okay,
please.
so you're the first person actually in the world that I'm telling this to, because this is, but I think it's very appropriate that I share what's happened with you, because you've also been the most intimately involved in this whole thing that I know started in Austin and is now laying itself out.
Hmm.
So I back in in Austin, I did ask. I said I need to have a very clear sign of what I'm meant to do.
Hmm.
I don't have any attachment to what it is, but I need something so big that it's just going to tell me yes or no. And I think I've told you, because Carl has been deceived, like he's deceived me in the past. I feel it. Like I'm way too connected to not feel that immediately.
Hmm.
And so when he asked me to marry him, I knew there was something wrong with it. It just didn't feel right to me. And I now have every single answer, 100%. And to first give you the outcome, I'm actually in a very good place. And I feel hopeful for the first time. I feel like I can finally move forward. And I'm taking it one day at a time. But basically what happened was right after we met and Laura basically told me I had to take my ring off, it was really an interesting thing that happened because I felt this that was a huge deal that day. I'm so glad you were there to witness that and to be there with me, because I don't know if I could ever really explain it to anyone that wasn't there that day. Mm-hmm. But I went through a really big emotional breakthrough there and really getting down to being fully honest with where I was at and what I was feeling with myself in a safe space. And I'm very grateful for everyone to hold that for me that day when I didn't know anybody. Like, talk about crazy place to do that with. But so then after that, she told me I needed to take off my ring, and I did. And then I was like, it's interesting when someone tells you what to do, then you really find out what you want to do, Yeah. And so I knew that I didn't want to take it off. And I knew that I knew there was something there that was holding me there, and that it wasn't anything to do with like codependence or needing to be with him. Mm-hmm. Not anything like that. It was just something bigger. And so then throughout December, we just got incredibly close because my energy shifted towards him, and he is an emotional authority, and he felt that. And so then he also felt much closer to me. And then we just had this breakthrough together. It was just, we could really feel each other. And we went to Mexico and had an amazing time in Mexico. But I still felt there was something off. And the whole time in December, I felt like there was something off. And then I actually, a week before Christmas, he was texting with someone in his class. And I said, and I could just feel it. I just knew it. I knew there was something going on there. And I asked him. And for the first time, he actually told me the truth. He said, I'm sorry. I am not being good right now. I am texting her and I shouldn't be. I don't even know why I'm doing it. And so I felt like, is this the thing? Is this the big thing I'm supposed to okay, because I told him never again. Mm-hmm. And then, I'm sorry, I'm trying to be as specific as possible because I don't have a lot of time, but I really want to try to give you the details.
No, I'm here and I want to hear. If it feels important to you to say it out loud, especially because this is the first time that you're verbalizing it, that's really important that you take the time and the space. And I know I book 30 minutes. I have a full hour. I know you're probably booked back to back. But
I also left half an hour buffer just in case, even if it was just emotionally decompressing or whatever it was.
So we look at that. We both have the time and the space. So you let the words come that need to come through you.
Thank you, Bethany.
You're welcome.
Okay, so but I felt that it didn't feel big enough, and I don't know, I didn't feel like that was my answer, but I knew there was still something. And so over Christmas, we had a great Christmas. We went to Mexico, had a great time in Mexico, really opened up to one another. We have great times together. We always have loved being with each other and in each other's company, and I just love being I love his pace on vacation because we're very similar. We work hard, but when we're on vacation, we like to do absolutely nothing except work out and and meditate. Those are the two things we have to get done. Besides that, and even some days I didn't do the working out, so it was fine. But it was just a really, really good trip. And we get back and I'm feeling amazing. I'm feeling refreshed. It's my first day back at work. I got this Peloton. I've been doing that. I've been doing Pilates. I'm feeling so good. And it's 5:45 in the morning and I open my email and I get this email from this girl. And this is someone that he had been talking with right before he asked me to marry him, which is why I knew there was just something. And she wrote this whole long thing saying, I'm so sorry. I need to tell you this. I need you to forgive me. And they'd basically been having an affair for 14 months. And it was really hard to read that, but I also felt like, okay, I'm not crazy. Like I just, it was almost like a relief that I wasn't like making this up in my head, because
Yeah.
it felt like, okay, at least now I know, like this is what this is. So she wrote this long thing, and she was actually pretty nice. Like I've actually know her, so I don't hate her. I don't have any ill feelings towards her. But what's interesting is, so the day before, he had completely cut it off with her and said, I'm giving it all to Amber, and we can't keep doing this. Because I've since looked through everything, which I've never ever done or even had a chance to do in the past. And I'll get to that in a second. But it was very clear that he was responding to her. She was very, very in love with him and wanted to leave her husband and her kids and be with him. And it didn't make any sense. And she was the one that she wrote this long thing saying, I need you to promise me that you will leave her. I can't keep hearing about Amber, because every conversation was about how she doesn't want to hear about me anymore. She wants him to leave me. And I know Carl well enough to know that he responds to attention. He absolutely responds to attention. But I could tell in this instance, it definitely wasn't him that was constantly pursuing it. It was more like he wasn't able to say no. Mm-hmm. And so at first I was, my immediate reaction was, well, screw him. This is my big sign. Thank you very much. Done. I'm done. And I was very much done, and I felt very done. And what's really interesting is I never ever thought, because this is not coming from a place of fear, this choice to actually move forward. This is coming from a place of, I'm an analytical person. And so we've had a lot of conversations about this. And what's really interesting is, in his entire life, he has never broken up with anyone. Mm-hmm. Ever. Mm-hmm. It's always been the other person has completed the relationship. And he's always told me, you will have to break up with me. I would never leave you. It's just, there's something about him that he just can't do it, or he chooses not to. I don't know, but he's never done it. So it dawned on me why this feels so different, because he definitely energetically feels very different. And I think it really makes the only reason I'm even entertaining this is because he did end this before I found out. If I had found out while they were still doing this, no way. There's just no way. And what's interesting is I feel like he said, Amber, I really feel like I have this, or I've had this addiction to attention, and that I don't even necessarily want to do anything with these people. I just need the attention, and I know there's something wrong. I know there's something I need to get help with this. And I can honestly say that for the first time since we've been together, I actually feel like we've made this huge breakthrough in understanding each other, and also on a completely different level of appreciation. And it's so strange for me to say this out loud, because I do feel like the common traditional viewpoint of this would be like, screw him, leave him, he cheated on you. But in a way, it's like, I finally get what's happened over the last 11 years with us, and what's happened in that 14 months time frame. And also finally him being on this, the page of, I finally get you. I understand that you are so connected and you feel these things. For the longest time, he would be so resistant to how I can interpret completely unspoken energy. Mm-hmm. And it's like, the crazy thing is, I feel like we're like now it's almost like I have no question anymore. Like, cause he has been 100% open book, which he's never, ever in 11 years been. And he said, I've made this decision over the last, honestly, he says, I've kept feeling guilty and she was the one who kept pursuing it, but he totally took responsibility for his part in it. He wasn't just deferring it to her. And so he's given me a list of things that he's doing. He's seeking counseling to work on himself for him. Like, it can't be for me. And he's made that very clear. It needs to be for him.
Yeah.
And I've told him, you know, actions are the only way that I can trust you again. I don't have the capacity to trust you without action over a repeated period of time and consistent.
Well, that's the definition of trust. That's how you rebuild trust. It's consistent action over time. That is how you, like in relationship coaching or therapy, like whoever he's working with, they will hold him accountable to that. That's like a therapeutic definition of trust. So anyone he's working with should also hold him accountable to that definition, because his expectations, I actually glanced at both of your charts this morning before I got on the call. And it's interesting because like whoever he chooses to support him in understanding himself and in repairing and rebuilding or building from scratch. It's not really rebuilding because you two will never have what you had before. It will be something new. Which actually is like a thank God thing. Yeah. Like, phew, I don't really want that back, even though there's a lot of good sides to it. But it will be his responsibility, essentially. Both of you will need to show up. But how he's showing up, it's his responsibility to be taking actions in a way that make you capable of seeing the repairs happening. Mm-hmm. That's his responsibility. Anyone he's working with, because he's what's considered like the betrayer. Mm-hmm. And so that's not like it's his fault. He's got to make amends in this way. That's not like an extra punishment thing. That's just the way that the emotional connections happen. Like, he has to do that part or you won't be able to heal in a relationship with him.
Right.
That's not like because I said so or because you said so. That's because energetically and emotionally, that's how humans work.
Makes total sense. That's what I feel.
Yeah. So just so you know, like that anyone that's trained in relationships will be supporting, holding him accountable to that like ideal, essentially, is that whatever work he's doing on his own should support that. Mm-hmm. So the fact that he said it out loud, the fact that you feel it, and the fact that he's getting help and support in this area, like, I think that that's something, at least when I went through this, totally different, but a lot of similarities in the betrayal piece that I went through with Jake, knowing that there are standards and that they're like, oh, that's trust, and other people understand that is the definition of trust, that, oh, it's been 3 months and Beth's still pissed. Like, no, dude, like, you betrayed her for how long? Like, yeah. It doesn't matter what, if you betrayed her for 5 seconds, it just takes time.
Yeah.
And that is the trust piece, is that it's over consistency over time. So hopefully that's helpful for you to hear.
No, it's very helpful. Because that's really what I feel is the only way to heal this. That's just coming straight from just like thinking a lot about it, and so I'm glad that that's what they would expect him to do, because that's what I need. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so it's been interesting. Like I did this thing. Do you know Brooke Castillo?
No.
Okay. She does the Life Coach School podcast. I really love.
Oh yeah, short blonde hair.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay.
So she has this model that is very similar to what I learned in IIN for coaching, like a self-coaching model. And you take you determine what your problem is by just doing a thought download. There's sort of writing some stuff for 5 minutes, and then you determine whether it's circumstance, thought, feeling, action, or result, whatever that problem is, and you fill it in, and then you fill in the rest of the things, and then you create an alternate thought, and then fill in the rest of it. So the first one was basically, I feel like I can't trust Carl anymore. That was my thought, or I can no longer trust him. So circumstance was Carl cheated on me. Thought, I can no longer trust him. Feeling, betrayal. Action, close myself off to him when I feel betrayed. And then result would be that we stray apart. Mm-hmm. Alternate is Carl cheated on me. Circumstance, obviously I don't have control over the circumstance. Everything else I do. Well, the thought I do. Thought is he has struggled for a long time. He wants to be loved and wanted, desired. So that gives me a feeling of love towards him. So action, show him love and forgiveness. Result, he will reciprocate that love and we can move forward together. And of course, I don't know what the result will be, but all I know is that I can't have these thoughts continuously and expect positive, unrelated outcomes.
You can't have what thoughts?
I can't have negative thoughts without choosing or reframing my thought so that it creates a different feeling, which will create a different action, which will create a different result.
Yes. And I want to just say out loud to you, so like this is something to be aware of, especially around the energy piece of it for you, because yes, if you keep choosing negative thoughts, you will keep getting, like, you can see where that will take you. Mm-hmm. But I would encourage you two things. Number one, to stay as detached from the outcome as possible, like, because what I'm hearing you say is that it's a negative outcome for you to leave Carl, and I want to give you permission to not have that be a negative outcome. That's just an outcome.
Yep, that's true.
Okay, and so when you can have a thought, and it's because then you'll also give yourself permission to release negative or positive around your thought. And you're just looking thought, outcome, and you're releasing the judgment, the self-imposed judgment that you're putting on there about negative, positive, mm-hmm. and you're just seeing the connection. And then it becomes a choice that's more judgment-free. Mm-hmm. The second piece is to really consider that the energy that you're putting into the relationship and the energy he's putting into the relationship, that's like a sacred space. Mm-hmm. And also for you to get clear on what you tolerate about energy that he gives outside the relationship. And because that's not just, so for example, we talked about shared meaning on our last call. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how much work you guys did around that.
We've done quite a bit. Yeah.
Okay.
We've defined quite a bit.
If you've done some work around that, this will land even more intensely with powerful outcomes for you two. Because if you can create shared meaning around what the word fidelity means mm-hmm. to the two of you and what the expectations are in the relationship for you to feel safe. Mm-hmm. Because right now, when a woman is coming out of, or anyone, this isn't just a woman thing, but as you're coming through the process of the betrayal, like you are going to have ups and downs with that. Mm-hmm. And there's also the part of it that if you guys are both emotional authorities, mm-hmm. That's actually why I wanted to time your call differently, was because I kept catching you in the same part of your wave. And there's a real, like when I was looking at your chart and like how like the moon moves and like different like activations in your chart, I was like, I really want to see her at a different time in her chart. Not that it was a bad place that I was seeing you before, but it's just, I wanted to see a different side of that. And and recognizing, so like, I think it sounds like he's accepting the fact that energetically you pick up when something's off and that it actually causes you harm. Even if you don't know what is off, that the offness causes you harm. And that's actually a form of gaslighting that he was putting you through, of
you're right.
I feel like I'm crazy because
I've used that word with him.
Okay. There is actually, I did an interview. One of my clients actually is a gaslighting expert. Talk about such a cool fucking thing to be in the world. And she and I did a really casual interview over on my Happier Lives page. I'll send you the link through Facebook Messenger if you're open to listening in on that. Because I really like her approach. She defines it a little differently than like the standard therapy versions. And she talks about how we all do it. And it's on a spectrum, and we can ramp up our gaslighting. And she's like, when she realized she was doing it to her kids, and she's like, what the fuck? I'm the worst. Like, I'm going through this, but we all do it. So she's very relatable in that way. So I'd love to, I'm going to make a note to share that with you.
Thank you. Yeah. You know, what's funny is that word is only about 100 years old. Because that word came from a movie in the early 1920s or 30s where
when they used to light the gas lights.
Yeah.
Street, right?
So he would, I don't know, somehow he would turn them off to make her think that someone was turning them off. So she was like literally going crazy. The whole movie, he would make her think that things were happening.
Wild. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Love that.
Because I watched that movie in a film studies, and that's how I actually learned the word, which is funny. But anyway, yeah.
No, well, you've been experiencing some gaslighting as he's been keeping secrets from you. Mm-hmm. And this is the truth. Again, I guess I'm just sharing that I can really relate to this because I've lived through it. It's something now where Jake is like, he's like, dude, I will never fuck with your intuition again. Because he's like, I'm always going to lose. Like, he's like, there is just no getting around it. It's not even worth trying. And there's, like Jake's story is obviously very different than Carl's story, but I get what you're saying about, holy shit, like I'm finally seeing this person. I finally have the whole thing to work with. Like that was a big part of what made me choose to stay. And also the assignment I'm giving you to create shared meaning around what is fidelity. Like, I think that's a really good word for you guys to start with. Mm-hmm. It may not be the most powerful word that you guys ever do this for, but for right now, I think it's going to be a really strong starting point because you need to know that you can be safe and you guys need to be on the same page. Like this is, if it's going to work, you're both going to, it is a need, not a desire, not a want, not a nice to have. It will be a need so that when he's got any temptation that comes up in his universe, there is absolutely shared meaning with you about what's acceptable and what's not. Mm-hmm. And that fast check-in that I gave you last time as well, I think, like the feelings, actions, threats and triggers. Did we do that one?
I don't think so.
Okay. So that is, that's a betrayal trauma check-in mode. It's specific usually to like sex addicts, but there's two things. When you have betrayal trauma, I think the sex addiction model of betrayal trauma is one of the most powerful ways that any relationship can kind of integrate healing, because it's like, for me, like, I don't care if it was emotional betrayal or physical betrayal or what kind of betrayal happened in the relationship dynamic. When it's been a repeated behavior, to me, that feels very close to addiction. Mm-hmm. And for what you would need in this, there's a lot of correlation in, because so much of what's out there is like, oh, it's codependence if you stay, or, oh, it's this, or, oh, it's that. And like, I don't think that's true all the time. And so there's actually a really powerful protocol with sexual addictions, which honestly, I think Carl's might be borderline, like he's calling it attention, but there's a sexual component to it
No,
for him.
I think there's definitely, he has used that word addiction. Addicted to, like he was on this site where he would just get texts all the time from these Russian women and things like that, like sending him pictures and just having conversation back and forth, never actually doing anything physically with them. But he definitely has an addiction to that.
Well, there's so many terms out there in that arena, and I'm not like completely certified in that, but I have a lot of like in my PTSD training and my betrayal training. And then also like the recovery process I went through with Jake, like this is the model I found most helpful for us. And there was a definite sexual component but honestly, like I think there is a sexual component to you and Carl as well. So I'm just calling it that.
Yeah. No, there was for sure.
But there's, as far as like when you get into studying the addictions that are under this umbrella, like there's love addiction, there's pornography addiction, there's some people, their addiction is strip clubs. Other people, it's, very kinky sexual behaviors. And like, it's the specific behavior that they're addicted to, and they don't feel comfortable bringing that in their relationship. So they go get that met outside the relationship. And that's where that betrayal happens. Like, I mean, there's so many nuances to it. And because it's so not talked about really, there's like, the studies and science on it is kind of like always playing catch up, because honestly, the internet is way ahead of studying this stuff.
Yeah, makes sense.
So the reason that I'm bringing that up is, first of all, I'm going to also send you a betrayal trauma infographic that I want you, just for, I think, your own visualization. If you have this, it's the whole concept in one picture.
Okay.
And it talks about how there's like the emotional side, the sexual side, and the psychological side of the betrayal that you've been through. And I think that will be a good, first of all, just for you to see it. And then if it feels good, you can have a conversation with Carl about it or share it with him. The other piece is that, again, in the betrayal trauma model that I like the best in the whole sexual addiction realm, there's something called a full disclosure, a therapeutic full disclosure. I am not qualified to run those at all, but there's also, I think if you just look at what that process is, you'll get a feel for whether you and Carl actually need that level of something, or if it's something Jake and I did our version of that on our own. And I'm not saying, like, I feel a little awkward as you're reading it. They're really strict about doing it while both people have their own therapist and support person involved in the process, because shit can go sideways really easily around this topic. And the ultimate goal is always that both people would be healthy and safe. Okay, so take that with a grain of salt, but full disclosure, if you look up what that is, and kind of what that process is, that may inspire some structure, some guidance towards your conversations with Carl.
Okay.
And then the last piece there is just, I really want to validate for you that the reason I gave you the word fidelity to create shared meaning around is because that is a chance for you to honor your needs energetically, emotionally, physically, mentally, and socially, right? Like, so 5 and financially, I mean, you can go on and on and on with all the different ways. But for you to really come up with, what do you need? You get to be completely selfish in the baseline definition you create, and then you bring it to Carl and you guys can co-create, right? But I want you to get really totally in touch with yourself before you bring this to him.
Should I have him do that too?
You absolutely can. Yeah.
Okay.
Like this is something, especially like if you guys are at a place of like, no more secrets, no more lies, no more hiding. It's got to be like kind of like full disclosure all the time.
Yeah, it is basically.
And 100% transparency and, warts and all type agreement. You absolutely can do that. The other, as long as you make sure that you give yourself time and space to create that definition. If you tell him about it, if you be honest with yourself, if you telling him about it is automatically going to influence how you think about it. And then you answer for yourself either before you tell him, just so that you have no influence from him in that answer. And then bring it to him and be like, hey, I'm working on my answer. You should work on your answer before we co-create. So you can be completely respectful and transparent with him. I want you to start with being honest with yourself.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is because as you create that definition, how he's giving energy to these other women, it sounds like is the root of the betrayal that you both know is wrong for the two of you. And that's ultimately, like, it doesn't matter if I'm fine with Jake doing, sending text messages, or Susie Q Smith, or, anybody else in your world. Well, actually, every relationship has their own unique definition of fidelity.
What's interesting though, is as you say that, I feel like it's actually, and I've said this to him, it's honestly less about the act for me and much more about the fact that he deceived me. Deception is what, above all, is an absolute deal breaker. Like if I can't trust, even if he is doing that, I need to know. And lying about it to me is the core biggest problem for me.
Yep. And because you're not alone in that. That is so normal and so true I literally can't think of a single person I've worked with that hasn't been true. The behavior is always like a symptom. Right? It's never the actual cause of the injury or the harm to the relationship.
Right.
And that's why I'm saying, like, fidelity, I don't know if that's like the superpower word for you guys. I said this earlier because it's not actually the texting of other women that's the biggest issue, but it's a really good place for you guys to start on creating shared meaning.
Would you recommend? Oh, sorry.
No, I'm just saying it's because it's a tangible, sometimes when you get into like lying or hiding or energetically giving something away, it can become, because it's less tangible, it can become harder to define. And fidelity can just be like, no, you don't get to do this. This behavior feels like betrayal to me. And if this behavior happens, this is the final piece that I wanted to give you, was around the FAST check-in. So FASTTT. It's an acronym that stands for feelings. The A stands for actions. The S stands for sobriety. And then the 3 T's are triggers, threats, and tools.
Okay.
And so that structure, especially if emotions are running high, the structure of that can be a really powerful way to actually build trust in your relationship. If you're, let's say you have, and this is totally up to you and Carl to decide to use at all, first of all. And then if you do decide to use it, how often you would use it. When Jake and I started using it, at first we were doing it every day. I needed a check-in for what feelings have you been feeling? And it sounds like Carl's pretty in touch with that. I know he would be okay to share that. If you notice that he's having the same feelings all the time, you can look at a feelings wheel to kind of help him branch out. But it sounds like he probably is good there. So it's what feelings have you had today if you're doing it every day. the A, actions. So what actions have you taken? And the goal would be looking at what actions have you taken that are good for our relationship or are healing towards this. So it might be like his action might be, I spent a half hour meditating about our relationship today, and then I sent you a text message with a gift that made you laugh or whatever. Like, it doesn't have to be world-changing actions, but again, that consistency.
Yep.
S is the sobriety date. Like, again, because this is a sex addiction tool, they have it as a sobriety date. But I always found it really helpful. I wanted to hear out loud from Jake, like when it's been X number of days since I betrayed you. And because we had created shared meaning around fidelity, around like connection, around commitment, around all these different things that were important to us. So he understood energetically anytime he gave energy outside of our relationship, even if it, for us, it was, we came up with very clear definitions of this is energy outside of a relationship that is betrayal. This is energy that is safe and healthy as an individual to share with the rest of the world. Like me creating a course for my work, that's energy that I'm putting out into the world that's healthy for me as an individual, and it's not betraying our relationship.
Right.
If I was going on a date with another man, that's energy, even if I don't touch him at all. Or if I'm fantasizing about somebody else, that's energy going outside of our relationship that is in betrayal of our commitment to each other. So we created that shared meaning. That's where the fidelity word. So sobriety, you can also change. I mean, you can change that sobriety date. There's, you could change a start date is also something that some people like. If sobriety doesn't feel like it really lands, because that's very like 12 step to me, which I don't like. Love the programs.
Or almost like a renewal date, like.
That's like, so yeah, the start date could kind of be like, we choose today, or this day is the day we had the conversation. That's our start date. Like, it's been X days since our start date. Like, so some kind of honoring of time that's passed. And then threats, triggers, and tools. Like, a trigger might be like, I got a text message from, Jane, who I used to, and I didn't reply. The tool I used to handle that, I was triggered. I wanted to reply to her. So this is where the honesty, this is where trust building comes in, because now you've talked about the nice actions. You've talked about the start date or the sobriety, whatever. Timeline feels good, but then you also need to talk about the ickiness that can come up. And if there's been no ick, you get to celebrate that together. If you're like, I wasn't triggered by anything. I didn't feel threatened by anything. So I didn't need to use any of my tools. And tools would be things that you guys should both be adding to your arsenal, about, again, creating shared meaning around what tools do you have. The tool I used when I started fantasizing about an ex was that I went and meditated, or I went for a walk in nature, and really, like, I bounced my eyes to make sure I was looking at nature instead of going down a sexual fantasy path about somebody outside of our relationship. Or I turned my phone off, or I handed my phone to you so that I wouldn't text that girl back. Or I did text her back, and now the tool I'm using is I'm talking to you about it and being honest, because I know that was a bigger violation than the text. But both I know are not okay. Whatever comes up from that. And then this is how I approach it a little differently than the sexual addiction tool. Like, so that would be for the addict to do with their partner. I actually encourage my couples that they both get a chance to be heard. So you get to share your feelings. You get to share your actions that you've put into the relationship. You get to also recognize it's been X number of days since we recommitted, and that feels, whatever. And then here's the things that I felt triggered by, or I felt threatened by, and here's the tools I use to handle them. So it's a two-way. Like, for me, I love seeing couples both use that tool, because it's not like, anyway, there's a lot of reasons why I love that. So I'll just leave it at that. But how does that feel for you to kind of have some direction and guidance around?
It's really helpful. I mean, because I've told him I needed something like this where basically I needed him to ask me and bring it up because I know his general inclination would be to avoid these conversations, but oh,
Important side note that I forgot to say, this is part of the directions actually, is even though I encourage my couples to both do this, it actually does need to be the betrayer's job to initiate and to schedule.
yeah.
So it would be his job to say, okay, if I commit to a fast check-in with you every day at 5 p.m. or every Tuesday at 7 p.m. or every Saturday, we're going to have an hour set aside to do a really deep, thorough, fast check-in about the whole week. And then when Saturday, 12 p.m., it needs to be a specific, like it's an appointment in the calendar.
Yeah.
This is how it helps build the trust, is that he not only initiates creating, like, this is the time I commit to do it, but then at that time he says, hey, it's time for our fast check-in. And you're not reminding him, you're not mothering him, you're not nagging him into like, hey, can we do that thing?
Yeah.
And that's how you start building trust, because it's a way for him to, that is actually an action he can take. So sorry, that was an important part of the direction.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, and a quick question: triggers versus threats. A trigger would be a trigger if he got the text message and was triggered by it, versus a threat, he got a text message and wasn't. Like, what's the difference?
It's really personal preference. I like saying triggers, threats, and tools, because some people, the word trigger means one thing. It's again creating shared meaning around them. A trigger, how I define them, is a trigger is something that happened outside of you that you had no control over. How did you respond to that? A threat is something, an internal, like I had a thought, I had a feeling. That's how I personally define them. But I have some couples that they're like, we're just going to call everything that creates a reaction inside of you a trigger or a threat, and they just use the one word. That's fine too. Like, I don't care if you totally recreate every word attached to that. Like, this is, anything I share with my people is designed to get you results. So you take it and use it how it feels good for you. But yeah, that, to me, that's not an important distinction to make. So it's whichever one you feel like it is.
Okay.
You get to be right.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, no, that's really helpful because we've been discussing what to do. And in the interim, it's actually a lot harder to get a local therapist than you might imagine.
It's really hard. Jake and I went through like 4 as well. Because it's not even just finding one, it's finding one and then having it be a good fit.
Yeah.
Like, Jake fired his first one. We have one that we see together now. And that ended up being really cool. Something that might be helpful for you would be to make, when you are searching for them, to have a list of like interview questions, like that you could quickly even ask their secretary. That would help it be like, is this person a yes or a no at all? And if you look up at like the Gottman method, EFT, emotional freedom technique, if you have any other certification, like I feel like those 2 methods would be really helpful for someone that would be working with Carl. Gottman method, because it's got a lot of structure to it, and there's like homework that you can give people and they can be like, I did the homework, yay, check. Like, that might be really helpful for you to see him going through. And then EFT is the emotional freedom technique. Again, like that's like a way to have conversations that has structure to it. So those are 2 that I think if you ask the therapist, like, hey, are you trained in either one of these?
Yeah.
And then if there's others that feel helpful or important to you, I mean, Jake and I, the person we work with now, she's actually trained in like 5 different things that I was like, any one of these 5 would be great. And she had all 5 of them.
Wow.
So nothing is too big for the universe to deliver. And she's 5 minutes from her house.
That's amazing.
So it's totally possible for you. I'm going to hold space that you guys are going to find the best person ever for what you need right now.
Thank you. Yeah, I think he needs to go first, though, before we go together.
He absolutely needs to go first. And he may need to be going on his own. Like, you guys doing work together, you guys both, you sound like you're almost like evolved enough that you may be able to do a lot of that work on your own together pretty effectively. You may not need actually like a special together therapist. Like Jake and I having a together person is after a long time of us each having our own person. And then we finally downsized our therapy schedule, and we're like, let's just do one person for both of us. But it took us a while to get there until that was what was best for us. I know we only have a few minutes left, and I would love to, there's a couple notes I jotted down I'd love to share with you.
Okay.
But I also wanted to ask if there was anything you felt important to be heard. I feel like, have you said the words like, I choose to stay with Carl?
No, he says it every day to me. I haven't said it back.
Well, I don't even think you've said it to me. I think you just hinted around it long enough until
I haven't chosen that.
What do you choose? How would you define where you're at in your relationship right now? I feel like that's something important for you to get out of today's time.
Well, until yesterday, I was really in my mind saying I'm choosing to allow space for Carl to build trust with me again. That's really how I kind of view this right now. But then when I watched this thing that Brooke was talking about yesterday, she said, indecision is a luxury and it's not helping you with anything. So is it defined as indecision to decide to give space to allow someone to build trust? That isn't actually, I feel like there isn't any attachment to the result if I give space for that and allow space and also be fully open to the possibility that he can be successful with that. Because I can't sit in a place of negative energy towards him and not believing he can do it. That would not be helpful. I do actually believe for the first time since we've been together that he truly has evolved to what I wish he has been for a very long time. Like I finally feel like we are actually being an authentic couple now. Whereas before I felt like it was not very one-sided, but he used the term moral licensing as something that I think he believes was allowing him to continue doing this because he was being so incredibly supportive in a lot of other areas of my life. And when he recognized that that was a thing and he realized what he was doing, there was something that triggered him. Like, this is not right. So anyway, I'm sorry. To answer your question, I have not said that. So I guess the thing is with choosing, you can always choose later something else, right?
You are a generator.
Manifesting generator.
Manifesting generator. And so as you make your yes or no decisions, it is natural for you to have a lot of course correction. Not as much as a pure generator, but you're going to say it's right now, is this what's right for me? Yes or no? So today it's a yes.
Yeah, today is a yes.
5 minutes from now, it might be 5 minutes at a time. Sometimes it might be a day at a time. It might be a week at a time. That time can change. You get to honor yourself. You were designed to choose multiple times. So I want to give you permission that you don't have to make a forever choice right now. Your forever choice is, I will keep choosing yes to this relationship as long as it feels good for me to keep choosing yes. And here's what I need to keep feeling good. Here's my definition of fidelity. Here's my expectations around commitment. Here's how often I need to see actions. Here's the deal breakers for me as far as what's deception. What is lying? What is a secret? What's an unhealthy secret?
Mm-hmm.
Like all of these things that come up. So I think for you, it's about giving yourself permission to make a decision that feels like a decision for you. Because you're right now you are still you're not claiming a piece of this. And that's a disservice to you and to Carl. But you don't have to claim like, I choose us forever. You can say, I choose us today. I choose us for the next hour. That's what I'm capable of choosing right now.
Okay, I can do that.
And the other piece is, again, watch yourself on the assumed negative or positive.
Mm-hmm.
Like what you just said, like, I don't want to have negative feelings towards him that he can't do this. That's not negative. That's a lifetime of proof that he is not capable of doing this. That's not you being negative. That's you being aware that up until now, he has not done this. And you have every right. In fact, you would be doing, again, a disservice to yourself to put yourself in a trusting position with someone who has never in their lifetime done this successfully. And you can say, I'm aware that he's never successfully done this, and I choose to give him a chance to do this. Because just like he's never done this successfully, he's also never asked for help. He's also never had the level of transparency he has with you. I'm not saying that it makes him bad or wrong. And that's why I think you automatically calling it negative shuts down this beautiful space of you get to recognize this shit sucks. He's never done it successfully, and you're still choosing to be here. That's the gift that you're bringing. That's the action. That's the decision that you're making right now that is love, because there's no deserving on his side of it. There's no way that he earned that. This is you giving. Mm-hmm. And when you say like, oh, well, I just don't want to be negative, you're taking away the power of that gift and the power of your decision, because you're making yourself incredibly vulnerable. And there's a level of unsafety to how you're showing up in this.
Mm-hmm.
So honor that. And allow him to honor that in you.
Thank you.
You are welcome. And it's 12 o'clock exactly.
Oh,
we have to go. I love how we just we're like, oh, space, yay, and we use every last second of it. I'm gonna send you into your day with so much love, and I'll send you this recording and link, and then just stay in touch, and we'll talk soon.
Yes. Thank you so much, Bethany. I definitely want to follow up with this. All right. Thank you.
All right.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.